Hello and welcome back to a special edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth series. My name is Andrew McKeever. Today is Friday, February 20th, and today we have a very special program for you all. It's a conversation with the four candidates who are running for the two one-year seats on the Dorset Select Board. With us today, we're very pleased to have with us Henry Chandler, Jim Salsgiver, Carter Rawson, and Chris Brooks. They are the four candidates in play for those two seats on the Dorset Select Board. There is also another race for a three-year seat on the Select Board. Frank Parent, who is a current incumbent on the board, is running for that three-year seat, but he is running unopposed, so we figured we'd keep the attention on these four gentlemen here. I should mention also Henry and Jim are the two incumbents on the board. Carter and Chris are the challengers. The election will be decided by the two top vote getters will win the election. There'll be four names on the ballot for voters in Dorset. And like I said, the two top vote getters will wind up being on the board. What we're hoping to have today is really more of a discussion than a quote unquote debate. We're not going to have rebuttals or whatever. We are going to give each candidate the opportunity for a 1 minute or so long opening statement, and then from there we'll just go to some questions and again just sort of have a discussion about it all. The candidates will also be able to kind of respond or reply back to a comment that might have been made by one of the others. So we're not going to have formal rebuttals per se, but there will be that opportunity for cross dialogue or whatever. And I should also mention before I forget, voting will take place on Tuesday, March 3rd at the Dorset Town offices on Raptor Lane. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And Dorset will also be holding its floor meeting on Monday, March 2nd, starting at 7 p.m. at the Dorset School to discuss the articles on the town warning. Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you very much for making the time for this. Really appreciate that, and I'm sure the viewers and voters of Dorset will be interested to hear your thoughts on some of the issues in town. But without any further ado, let me stop there, and we can get started with the opening statements. Chris Brooks, you want to get us started, and then we'll go to Carter, then Jim, and then Henry, and take it from there.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate it. My name is Chris Brooks. I've lived in Dorset for 26 years, so I'm not a local. I am the president and CEO of Vermont Wood Pellet Company. We have 20 employees at the mill and about 80 logging crews that work for us. So I'm well versed in the need for housing and the local folks. I'm also on the Future Forest committee for the governor. That's outlining what we want our forests to look like and what we want our lands to look like for the next 20 to 30 years. During my period of being in Dorset, I have been on the select board for quite a few years. I was both as well, first I was in planning, and then I was on the select board, and then was chairman of the select board for quite a while. Part of the reason why I'm running is because at this point, after I stepped down, things have changed. COVID came along, mortgage rates have gone crazy, environmental issues have really taken hold. One of the things that hasn't changed is the housing issue. We did address that with one of the things that we did on the select board when I was on it, but we need to continue to look at that. I think we can all agree that probably the best thing I ever did on the select board was hired Rob. I mean, he is fantastic.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed. And the thing about Rob is he is so effective because he can, you point him in a direction, he's going to get it done without question. And it's easy to let Rob just take a hold and run with it. And I think at this point, he's been running with the Raptor Lane project for about 8 years. And unfortunately, I think the select board has stepped back and let him take charge. And if you do that, you can be left behind and maybe not ask all the questions that you really need to ask of him. So that's really why I stepped forward and said, you know what, I'll run for select board.
All right, time to get back in the game.
Yeah.
All right, Carter, your turn.
Hi, thanks for having me, Andrew. I'm Carter Rawson. I've lived in southern Vermont my entire life, generational family in southern Vermont, and have been a Dorset resident for the last 23 years. I own a general contracting company in town and have a young family, and Dorset's very important to me, and I am very aware of our housing needs in the town, and just felt like this project was turning into a bit of a steamroll rather than something that was where other options might be being looked at, and felt the need to sort of get involved in kind of steering things in a responsible direction for the town. Not to say that a project on Raptor Lane isn't, just felt like it might need a little more guidance rather than kind of letting our consulting firm and potential developers take the reins and run with it. Yeah.
All right, Jim, over to you.
Okay, my name is Jim Salsgiver. I've been a member of the Dorset Select Board for the past 7 years and running to continue to serve in that role. My wife and I bought our home in Dorset a little over 25 years ago. We moved here a few years later, brought up our 4 daughters in Dorset. Along the way, I retired but decided to stay busy by getting involved in the community on other boards. I was elected to the Dorset School Board 18 years ago and still serve on what's now the Taconic and Green Regional School District Board. I've also been chair of the Bennington-Rutland Supervisory Union for the past 11 years. 8 years ago, I also joined the Vermont School Board Association Board, representing the Bennington region, and I'm also treasurer and a member of the executive committee of the VSBA. And while on the VSBA, they appointed me 5 years ago to be their representative as a commissioner on the Vermont Pension Investment Commission. VPIC oversees the investment of Vermont's public pension funds. A few other things. I've also served for 5 years as Dorset's representative on the Southern Vermont Communication Union District. That's the CUDs were formed, pursuant to statute to help communities around the state get high-speed internet access. And the Southern Vermont Communication Union District represents 14 towns in southwestern Vermont. We expected that process to take a lot of years, but then the pandemic came along. Suddenly grant money was flying all over the place, and we were happy to finish that project and provide fiber access to all 14 towns, universal in 2023. Sorry for the list, but then I'm also one of the founding members of the Dorset Energy Committee. And while the Dorset Energy Committee's accomplished a lot of stuff over the past 5 years, I've also led the energy committees from all the towns in the North Shire came together to put together a program called Window Dressers, which I'm very proud of, helps build energy-saving window inserts in a community build Andrew has been involved with across the different towns. And that includes providing free inserts for residents that aren't in a position to pay for them. So that's my background. Again, I just want to say on the Dorset Select Board, I'm interested in continuing because, frankly, I'm proud of the work that the Select Board's been doing over the past 7 years I've been serving. That includes, there's the day-to-day operations of the town and making sure it works well, which is a focus of, every Select Board. But I think this Select Board has done a good job of being a little more forward-looking than some Select Boards might be. And it's important to be forward-looking on, there's certain projects like, since I've been on there, the issue of public safety has been a key issue. We continue to work on ways to try to improve public safety. It's a long-term issue that continues to be important with Dorset residents. But then also the forward looking is, there are some opportunities that just kind of land in your lap, and Raptor Lane is one of those. We've taken the opportunity to do some good things with Raptor Lane to date, including recreation and the new town hall. And, on the housing front, that's another one we may or may not, get to a point where we do something, but it's an opportunity that I think the select board has done a good job of trying to ensure that it continues to move along and over the entire time I've been here.
All right. Thank you, Jim. And Henry, your turn.
I'm Henry Chandler. I have been a member of the Select Board for 10 years. This time around, I was on the Planning Commission and the Select Board back in the 1980s and 90s. I was chairman of the Select Board for 5 years until I stepped away about 2 years ago. But I really enjoy that service, and I want to continue serving Dorset in this capacity. I moved to Dorset, I was just figuring it, 53 years ago. Came here right out of college, and I was just drawn to the beauty of Dorset. And I've started 2 businesses here. Each one has employed 8 to 12 employees. The first was a sign shop over in East Dorset, and the second, where I continue to work today, is Chandler Four Corners in Manchester. What I'm concerned about with Dorset is the sense of community. Dorset has a really strong, healthy community, and communities are strengthened by all the little communities that live within that larger community. And what I mean by that is like the Dorset School, first and foremost. It's where your kids go to school, and you go to a soccer game, and you meet new friends on the sidelines, and all the connections and the friendships kind of start from there. At least that's what happened to us. Robin and I brought up our family here and our kids, and it was great. But then you also have the Dorset Field Club. What a great social venue where people meet and gather and get to know each other. There's the Dorset Church. There's the Playhouse. There's even the Historical Society and the library. There are neighborhoods. There's so many little communities that work well within this larger community, and that's why people love to come here, because they sense like, wow, this is a real happening place. So, it was always a little expensive to live in Dorset. I call it it's just a little bit more to buy a home in Dorset, but people made it work. But then, the pandemic happened, and in that pandemic, we saw housing double, and that had a serious effect on our community, in that people just couldn't afford to live in Dorset anymore. A lot of people can't afford to even, they couldn't purchase the house that they live in now. So that's why I want to continue on the select board. Housing is an important issue, and I think we've got some good ideas, and we can get into them later. But Andrew, that's what
All
I'd like
right.
to
Well,
start
thank you,
with.
Henry. Thanks to all of you. And before I forget, say thank you all for running as well, for putting your hats in the ring and offering your service to your town. I think that's super important, and we need as much of that as we could possibly get.
It's part of being in a small town.
That's right.
It's like what you said.
Well, okay. Well, let's start off then with some questions. And at the top of my list was obviously the Raptor Lane issue. I think just about all of you mentioned that at one point or another. You've had a couple of forums recently in the last few weeks about this, community forums to kind of get input from the community about it. For those who might not have been following this too closely, there's a proposal to put some housing on the Raptor Lane that runs off of Route 30. guess it's fair to say it's aroused a certain amount of discussion, and is controversy too big of a word? I don't know. But anyway, I guess I'll just start. And Chris, throw this one to you first. Is Raptor Lane a good spot for more workforce, affordable, market rate housing to be placed there to help solve some of the housing issues in Dorset?
It could be. It could be. When I stepped off the select board quite a few years ago, I just stayed out of politics, completely stayed out, and watched quietly from the sidelines, and as I should. That's I'm not on the board anymore. But when I heard about Raptor Lane, I decided, you know what, I should do what I used to do on the select board. So I took a deep dive and really looked at everything from the state level on down, because it's really important to look at where the funding's coming from, what's happening, and that sort of thing. And I put together a letter, and that's the great thing about some of the things that have changed is you can educate the public very quickly and or encourage them to give feedback. So I put this letter out there to get people involved, and it sort of raised some hackles. I mean, I think people were, they definitely responded to this letter. And so that sort of started a groundswell of there's something going on here, and is it the right thing? And I was looking at it as if, and I think we all agree, there is a need for housing. That's without question amongst all of us. We need to work on housing. But how do we do it so that the town is left in the best possible position? And so when I sent it out, there were 127 units that were to be built. And there was a lot of opposition to that, that's a lot of units for the population of Dorset. People were questioning that. But we also, another thing that came out of that letter and people's voices and questioning was, what problem are we trying to solve with this? At the other night's meeting, there were a lot of good folks showing up, and they were saying, well, one person wanted to solve, they wanted their mother to be able to live after downsizing in Dorset. Others were talking about housing teachers at Raptor Lane. Local workforce obviously is important, and essential workers. And we worked on Coventry. That was many years ago, and that was for essential workers, and it still does. It's there's a 3-year
Culver Lane.
Culver Lane, excuse me. There's a 3-year waiting list for that, and so we saw it even before. But in discussing that, we talked about price range for what's going to go into Raptor Lane, and it's between $450,000 and $750,000 for the homes. According to Vermont Housing, affordable is 80% to 120% of median income, which means in Bennington County, a 2-bedroom house at $330,000 is affordable, or a 3-bedroom at $380,000 is affordable. So if you take that, the lowest at Raptor Lane is $450,000. 10% down with your household income, you need $148,000 to buy that. Median income for teacher salary is $67,000. So, that's that got me wondering. Then some folks the other night were talking about senior living. And that's the higher end, 750. But are folks expecting services like Equinox on Battenkill? If so, there's a sports center, there's a pool, there's full-time maintenance, there's nursing assistants. That's hefty association fees. And who's going to manage that? Are we going to manage it? What is it? So I look at that, and those are problems that our citizens say we need to solve. But so far, I haven't seen anything that solves those issues. You know, it's you know, what are we trying to solve here? Is it workforce? Is it senior? What is it? And how do we make it affordable?
Well, all right, that's a good place. Let's move on. Carter, what are your thoughts on the Raptor Lane?
I think my initial concern with the Raptor Lane project is that the town of Dorset's infrastructure, both town centers, is subpar for any growth in them. So I think my concern is that we're just taking a problem that we have in our two town centers and putting it somewhere else that's limited by infrastructure resources as well. So I think it's not an opposition to doing something on Raptor Lane as much as is this the best use of the town's resources when it's widely accepted amongst town and city planners that the best, most responsible, most efficient growth is within existing town centers. And so the fact that we have a water system in the town of Dorset that needs work, a lot of work has been done to it, but it still needs help. And we don't have sewer systems in either the town of Dorset or East Dorset. So I think it's a prioritizing situation that I'm a little bit hung up on, where you're going to put this development in at Raptor Lane also with no sewer. That's going to have individual septic systems that serve blocks of this community that you're creating. And you're going to look back and say, okay, well, we've developed that. Now where do we go next? Rather than making a sustainable system in our existing town centers. So it's certainly not an opposition to creating housing in Raptor Lane. It's more a reluctance to prioritize it.
Okay. Jim, over to you.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's funny. Somebody in this whole discussion brought up the fact of, brought up a debate I had when I was first elected to the Dorset Select Board back in 2019, and how in that discussion I brought up Raptor Lane, and I said, my own view is, wouldn't it be nice to have something like like the Dorset Village Green created as a community, sitting up there or something. And said at that point, pie in the sky, but who knows what we can do. And, since the time I joined the select board, it's interesting because, this has become a very big issue over the past 3-4 months. But, since I look at the Raptor Lane project a little bit differently because, when I first got on the select board, one of the first things actually at that time in 2019, I was involved with, the select board was figuring out how to reach out to the community. And one of the things we did at that point was brought in Vermont Council on Rural Development to do a project that became Dorset Tomorrow, to get, input from the community as to, what are things that are important. And I think the select board has continued to try to do that over time. At that point, it was like, let's look at this. What can we do with this property? And that defined some things like the town hall and recreation that we've been working on. But housing was one of the things brought up as well. So, after that, it was the creation of the Raptor Lane Committee, which is, specifically looking at Raptor Lane, what can we do there? And then the town started doing studies as to, to try to figure out what actually could be accomplished on that piece of land. And we've been doing that for 6 years. Then we had the Dorset Housing Committee created to focus, which you were on the Dorset Housing Committee.
Correct.
And, to look at, what can we actually accomplish there. So I've looked at this as, one of the things, I used to be in the private sector too, and I was used to things happening very fast. And then I started doing board work up here. I realized things move really slowly. And, honestly, I look at this project and say that we've been working on this, trying to figure out what we can do for 6 years. And then, when we started, we hit a point last year where, at the end of last year, where it started feeling really real because there was a proposal on the table. And, that proposal, I thank my lucky stars that, Chris wrote the letter and people got involved because we needed that community engagement and we hadn't had it to date. So I think, what we've, what's happened is it's a really, we agree that housing is a necessity. We don't necessarily agree whether Dorset should be a part of the solution or not. But I always looked at Raptor Lane as Raptor Lane gives us the opportunity to do something. And whether or not the right thing is, we have a piece of land that cost us next to nothing. And, the state's trying to push this, so they come up with new financing techniques and stuff, and maybe that can help it happen. It's hard as heck to get a job, to get anything like this built. But, we've been plodding along and moving towards, what could we actually get accomplished in terms of housing. And, I will have to agree that the proposal that was on the table that got all the attention was not the right thing for Dorset. I had serious questions. I don't think, we were moving it along in the regular process, but I think, now that we have the town engaged, we have a great opportunity to figure out what is right for Dorset. And so, I'm pleased where we are in the project. It's been a little rougher couple of months because, there are a lot of people with extremely strong opinions, but
Sorry.
that's that's the democratic process.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think the select board, all of us, there are people who think that we're upset that people are bringing stuff up. I think I speak for all the select board members. We're happy that people are engaged because the democratic process is a messy process. But having dialogue is where you get to the point where, you can get something that we're either going to be able to do something, not be able to do something, or, community will decide what they want to support. All along, I've thought that, frankly, doing a, mini Equinox on Batten Kill plus another thing for affordable housing, made some sense. But I'm not deciding. And we need the community to be involved in making the decision as to what makes sense. And I think we're in a position now where the community is involved, so hopefully we'll come up with something good.
All right, well, Henry, what's your thought on it?
Raptor Lane seemed to me a gift. It was back in 2018, I think it's when Rob received the call that this gentleman that had owned that property for 15 years, I think at that point, wanted to give it to the town for a bargain sale. So we got a $1.8 million chunk of land for $100,000, and that land now is worth well over $3 million. So great. Then we said, what are we going to do with it? And we wanted to enhance our recreational facilities that we've been developing for a number of years. We even have a rec department in Dorset. It's like, wow, that's great. And then we moved the town offices up to Raptor Lane, and but it just seemed also to a great location, right down on Route 30, pretty much invisible from the traveled way. No one is going to see this development, if you want to call it that. The 127 units was really an effort to just see what the maximum capacity of the land was. I'm not sure any of us thought it was going to be actually 127 units, but the permitting and going through the process is always and there's compromises and there's changes, and as Jim said, it takes forever, but it's a healthy process. It's in a great location because it's a busy part of town. I mean, you've got a factory right at the bottom of the road. You've got an RV park across the street. You've got one of the biggest energy distributors in propane, Haskins Gas, right there. Plus the quarry that attracts hundreds of people on a hot, humid summer day. So it's a busy area already. So I think adding 60, 80, 90, whatever homes is not going to have it's not going to disturb the peace and rural character of Dorset. So it's a process, and we've been working through the process, and throwing that proposal out to the public, I think, was a good thing, because it really stirred up the interest, and it stirred up conversation, and now we're having the heart-to-heart, honest conversations of, as Jim said, is this something Dorset should even be doing? Is this the right place? What is the count? How many do we need? I personally feel that because of the cost of buying a house in Dorset, we don't have inventory in the, as you said, $400,000 to $700,000 range. I mean, we don't have inventory between that and $1 million. I mean, we used to have 60 to 80 houses on the market throughout the 2000 teens.
And we have 6 at the moment.
and now we have 6. So,
And not exactly bargain price.
no.
I remember the days when the realtors were, screaming that they had too many and nothing was selling.
Exactly.
So
Not that long ago.
No,
if we're going to be a healthy, strong community, and have have the schools continue to have, the church can continue to have our stores continue, we need to add inventory, and this just seems like the best way to add inventory, and it's not going to happen all at once. We could integrally, is that the right word, phase it in, and so that no one will even notice. This is an invisible site. So I'm all in favor of Raptor Lane myself,
All right.
as long as we get the input from the community, and we
I
think
feel
it's- yeah.
that there's a
I was going to say,
strong.
before we move on from Raptor Lane, I'm
Yeah,
sure there must be
can I-
some comments you
Well,
want
can
to.
I? Yeah, the thing that I'm a social libertarian and a fiscal conservative. I mean that's and
What's that mean?
I'm all over
That's,
the
that's,
place.
that's familiar to me.
I'm all
That's
over the place.
confused.
But
I think he's smart.
but how do we finance this thing? That's what it comes down to for me, is how do we finance this? Because when we did this previously, we made sure that the town was never going to end up holding the bag.
Right.
And that was our, we knew we needed housing for essential workers. So we took that on, but we were not going to get, the town wasn't going to get left holding the bag. And I can't make the numbers work on this thing.
The numbers are going to be really hard to work on this.
Yeah.
Culver Lane was a good opportunity to do a project that all the
Just
stars
to try.
aligned.
Yeah.
And
But the
on
money
this
was given to
project,
us.
Agreed.
The money.
Right.
and on this project, I also look at things like down in Bennington and in Brattleboro, they had redevelopment of the center of the town,
Mm-hmm.
and they got those projects done, even though after it was built, the assessed value of the newly built stuff was about half of what they had spent on it.
Right.
It's possible to get things done. It often requires, grant funds. It requires whatever, getting money from wherever you can. And actually, the key is, like, I'm a finance guy, so I looked at the 127 units and all, and I had huge questions on it was a single page of the finances,
Yeah.
and I had tons of questions on it. But I think we all need to keep open-minded. It's really easy to say that if it the numbers that have come out is it's cost $450 a square foot. If it costs $450 a square foot and you don't get any grant funds or anything like that, it's not going to be doable.
Nope.
Yeah.
So, but you have keeping open to the idea that there can be grant funds. There can be like the CHIP program is an interesting program that can help support this. And I was on a session on, introduction to CHIP yesterday with the League of Cities and Towns. And, it could be a good vehicle. It's not going to be the whole thing. Because, the project that was proposed had a $75 million bottom line of expenditures. And they didn't even include whether CHIP was in there or not. And it was,
Right.
kind of confusing in some ways. But,
And CHIP is only
CHIP
for infrastructure.
and CHIP's only for infrastructure,
Right.
and it's only to the extent that whatever you build can support, whatever you build, the incremental tax revenues off of that, limit how much you could do with CHIP.
Right.
So, I think it's going to be really hard to make a project pencil out. But I don't think, I think we're not going to be able to get to the answer of whether we can actually do it. There are commissions that provide grant funds and all that. I think, there are opportunities out there. Honestly, one thing I like about the select board, we have a couple of projects that we've like the walkway in Dorset and, looking at
Sure.
redoing East Dorset, where we had the opportunity to get them scoped out and figure out how much it would cost and come up with plans. My own gut is, we don't have the money to do those. But what if one day some grant it's like with the CUD. Suddenly money was falling out of the trees.
Right.
We had $9 million that landed in our lap. And so we were able to partner with somebody to get the whole damn project done before anybody else did. So I think, you need to be open to the idea that there could be opportunities. It might be a waste of time because we may not be able to ever make it pencil out. Yeah. But I think you need to be open to the idea that if we do the work to get us to a point where we can say, okay, if we can put all, this is something the town can support, and if we can make it work. And that's a part of like the idea of the senior downsizing.
Mhm.
I think that meets a real need in the town, and that's something that if we just were putting something like that up in Raptor Lane, we'd have developers knocking down our door to do it. I think today, and because they'd be knocking down our doors, we say, okay, well here's something else you have to do if you want to get that project done. And then it's going to take some creative financing and all. It's never going to be easy to get this done. These projects never are. But I think we have to keep, if we do our planning, we're in a position to then figure out whether we can actually make it happen or not.
I got the opinion, or I got the impression that we were further along maybe than we are with this project. But I having built a major mill and manufacturing facility up in Rutland, I've worked with grants, I've worked with HUD, I've worked with USDA.
That's not easy either.
No, none of those things are easy, and I'm always skeptical of where are the strings? Where are the strings attached to these things? And like with CHIP's great. It really is. But if it underperforms, it's the taxpayers that have to pay.
Well, that's
Not
where
necessarily.
that's
No,
where
they
should
do.
explain exactly what a chip is. I mean,
That
right.
incremental tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like TIFs, which people also
Right.
won't know. But I think
TIF
Sounds
tax-
like
I'm
tax
just
in the
speaking.
future to pay for
Right.
that.
So it's tax incremental financing.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just speaking for myself. I'm one
Yeah.
of 5 people on the select board now, and I may or not be on it in the future.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, my red line, and there's some people say I'm too conservative, is the town of Dorset can't have any downside on the project. I mean, if you do the CHIP financing, then we would want to have a project that's attractive enough so that it's essentially, with CHIP financing, there has to be an agreement between the developer and the town, and you could have a sponsor too.
Right.
And that has to say, if there's not enough income from the incremental,
Mhm.
who pays? I don't want the town of Dorset to be paying that.
Yeah.
And so you're right. There's potential strings you have to deal with that.
And if
But-
if it falls to the developer, there's even and if the developer fails and goes to bankruptcy, we lose all control. I mean, and
Well, at that
don't get
point,
me
we
wrong, I
don't lose
always
control.
look at-
There's
yeah.
a project out there, and you've got to. We probably, either it's going to just turn into nothing,
Yeah.
and the the lenders and the developer all lose, and we're stuck with kind of a maybe a mess.
Yeah,
But or or if it was a project that made sense in the first place, then hopefully somebody else will come in and do it.
yeah,
But this is why there's a pre-development agreement and a development agreement, because a lot of this is fleshed out. What if this?
Right.
What if that? What if, and that's frankly why we withdrew the RFP because
There were problems.
The guy
Oh,
Like
yeah.
pledging $2.25 million and giving the land away for $1 before
Well-
we even had a plan for the property.
Well, we
Yeah,
weren't. There was no
we
way we
weren't
were going to
doing
give the
that.
property away
that,
okay.
at that point.
Yeah.
And and
I understand, but it was like they were sort of dangling the bag in front of these developers with those pledges of saying we're willing to do this.
well, it's
It's almost like you kind of just show your hand.
if we hadn't thrown those things in that this may be possible,
no one was.
we wouldn't have gotten the 3 that we had in responses to the
Which
first RFQ.
turned into one.
Well,
Yeah.
which turned into
one
honestly,
and a half.
honestly the half may be the best in the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
I think we were working with the consultants that all helped us understand is that again, it's really hard to get these things done. If you want to have anybody start talking to you about it and start doing some of the due diligence, you have to make it attractive. And the fact that we had done the habitat studies and the Edmund Kesselring did the studies on what could this possibly support from the standpoint of septic and water and all. Nothing's final, but we had done all those studies, so we already had scoped out enough of it, and now we've done the housing and market study as well. That's what makes people say, oh, maybe this is something I could do.
On the drive over, Carter made a couple of really good comments regarding using this as a financial, a means to an end.
Yeah.
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 So you want to,
Yeah, I mean, and this is just spitballing. This may be a terrible idea. It may be an idea that makes some sense, but just one thought is that we have these infrastructure shortages in our town where we have town centers, and I don't want to repeat myself, but to grow efficiently so people aren't driving from Raptor Lane to the Dorset Union Store, from Raptor Lane to the church. You grow within the town center. People can walk. They don't have to be getting in their cars, starting their cars, burning fossil fuels. And so what if you did some sort of subdivision on Raptor Lane, sold off some properties privately, and made some money that coupled with chip financing and things like that, you could make infrastructure improvements in the town centers. And, this is just
No,
Just
I
to-
mean those are
it's-
those are real good thoughts, and Rob's already worked on ways to, if we did a water system in Raptor Lane, that could actually potentially be used to solve some of our problems in the town. I think from our perspective as select board members and all, our issue is we've been working on, actually it's the Prudential Committee that's done a phenomenal job in getting the water system together, and we've accomplished a lot. But we want to get that going. But as far as saying that, oh, we can provide housing down there, it's densely populated as it is. With it's even if we solve all the problems of the Dorset water system, the town doesn't own anything down there, and where are we going to make housing happen?
And let's
So
not forget that it's an historic district.
let's
It has an
yeah.
established pattern of development. It's kind of on the continental divide of Vermont, because a sewer system is, in my mind, impossible. It's not. State would never let you do it. We've spent $5 million. We've gotten $5 million of work done on that water system in the last 2-3 years for only $1.8 million of the fire district's money, not the town's.
Which is
money.
phenomenal.
I'm on the fire district, so I'm paying part of that. So
And-
thank
and-
you.
And it's been, it has really created much more efficiency in that system, in that instead of 120 gallons per minute of use, we're down to under 60 gallons per minute of use. That was all from leaks.
Yeah. It doesn't drain in 20 minutes anymore. Literally, it would drain in 20 minutes if
Yeah.
you shut off.
Yeah. So that, and right now, we've had a moratorium in the center of Dorset for forever,
Yeah.
it seems. And we've drilled the second well off of Cheney Road, and that is ready to come on, and likely will come on and that will end the moratorium on development. But the pattern of the development, you had mentioned infill the other night. That's not going to fly.
Well,
So-
infill's tough for us to make happen, the same as accessory dwelling units is another great idea. But again, that's only going to happen really when existing residents decide to do those projects.
Yeah, but if you provide the infrastructure necessary, some of that stuff happens organically. I understand we have the limitations of the historic district, and maybe that means without changing the character of the town, you make some adjustments to what's allowable there. I don't think it's unreasonable to try to make our town center, and it's a wonderful one. And you've also got East Dorset, which that could use some help to kind of become a more robust village center. I think it's worth looking at before we prioritize making another community.
Let me spitball something that both of you have said. You talked about taking up there, using that, developing it to a point where we can sell off lots and earn funds for a housing trust. And we did sign up for a housing trust, right?
We discussed putting one together, and it's not together yet because you gotta have a funding source.
But I think
And the funding source could be selling properties.
So let's say that happens. You've said that the senior center would be maybe standing in line to build that. So we get the senior center built up there, and we sell off some lots. So we're earning income, or the town is earning income from both of those developments. Now we've got money. Now you take that money.
We're probably not earning money from them because again,
we
don't want to be. The town doesn't want to be a developer.
Yeah.
Well,
Be in the real estate business.
let me put it this way. You put it into the housing trust. So the funds, you get some funds in your housing trust. You're solving the senior issue, but you've got funds in your housing trust. You take those funds and you go to Dorset in general. And we all talk about Dorset as the green and Dorset. No, it's Dorset. It's East Dorset, it's South Dorset. It's Dorset. And you've got a teacher coming into town who earns $67,000. They need to get that price down to a point where they can afford to buy it. So we have a fund available, and that teacher can apply to get that funds to buy down a house to where they can afford it. That house is then deed restricted, so they can afford to live there. There's a 2% increase every year that their earnings, but they're not going to earn. They can't sell it for a huge amount of money. And at that point, we're solving the issue with teachers. So we're taking on these two issues, and there's no outflow of cash from the town having used our land.
But we're not adding inventory. We need to add inventory. That's the whole problem.
Well, by subdividing and selling off properties, I know you're not adding inventory to the real estate market, but you're adding properties
that are
the town.
available to these
And
people.
if you made 2 3/4 acre subdivisions in Raptor Lane, and who knows, I build houses, I might want to buy a few of those properties and build small, 1-2 bedroom homes that someone in the hollow who is trying to downsize, and an older person who's trying to downsize would be interested in buying. That gets them out of that house, and that creates some housing inventory.
I mean, some of this has already been
So-
done. You look at Wilson, Wyoming. I mean, that's a suburb of Jackson where the billionaires kick the millionaires out. I mean, it's unbelievable. And they've done this. They've said, all right, we're going to do deed restrictions, and we're going to help. We have a housing trust, and we're going to help people buy these down. Ziegler's, their daughter lives in one,
Yep.
and she loves it. She thinks it's fantastic. You know,
It's like Telluride.
but-
Telluride has got, everyone got kind of kicked out of
That came
town.
up the
Right,
other night.
and,
yeah.
right.
and they all living in housing that is deed restricted or,
Right.
or supported
But we can,
in some
we
way.
can, if our
But I
issue,
think we
what
can-
happened to Telluride?
but
It's
if our,
like hollowed out.
I think you're right that we need to be. I think we continue to need to be open to all of the above. I think that, and that's what the good discussion will hopefully create. As to what the best outcome is. To me, it seemed if we want to have again, I thought the opportunity to potentially provide a in a way it came up the other day as well that we've had new communities sort of like this pop up in Dorset over the years.
Mhm.
And we got one on either side of Raptor Lane.
Black Rock and Owls.
And so if you had the ability to do something with a real focus on, now we all know that generally building stuff in town, if somebody else decides to build it, it's not going to be affordable to the people we're trying to help serve.
but we could use
But-
the funds
but-
to make that affordable.
Well, I think that's a very expensive proposition, but again, I think we're open to anything.
Mhm.
But it's it's a matter of again, to me I always looked at this as an opportunity to maybe have an impact without having any real impact on the Dorset taxpayer, the Dorset resident.
Yep.
And so I've always been, as I said before, personally I'm really hesitant for the town to ever think that they're in the business of providing housing. It's like if we can facilitate something happening that is gonna support without having the town have a downside to it, then that can be a good outcome.
We're all in agreement on
But
that.
if we're in a position where down the road we set up a housing trust and now we're going to be taking applications to figure out how much money do I give to this person to buy this house and all, that's complicating the lives a lot. But
And I'm
maybe it's a good
But
outcome.
it's worked in other places.
Well,
It
how,
could work. It could
how
work.
does that work? I mean, you buy a big older house for $1 million. I mean, what's it going to cost you? So it's a one unit house, and then you've got to, let's say we want to make it into two, so you're going to have to spend another $500,000 or more to make it into a
But what if you-
duplex.
So, and one of the things that I really liked about the conversation we're having is that you immediately said, I might want to buy a couple of those and do this. Well, now we're helping taxpayer citizens. We're not competing with a builder. We're now supporting a builder and helping their income, which is part of our tax base. And, that's important. We've got some really smart people in our community who are doing things that, we need to support. So, I think that's really important. I am, like I say, fiscal conservative. I don't want Dorset to be holding the bag on any of this. But I think if we get creative, we can get Dorset to earn funds for, a fund. And the way it really works is anywhere across Dorset. So it's not going to be $1 million house. That I doubt that's going to be. I think
It's the cheapest one on the market.
you go to East Dorset, or you go to you go to. I mean, I can tell you a house that's going to be on the market for $500,000 next year, and it'll sell right away. But let's say it's that house. It's a two bedroom, two bath. Anyway, it's 2 bedroom, 2 bath. Teacher wants that. Okay, it's $500,000, but it's got to be down closer to $300,000 for that teacher to afford it. Okay, then the town buys it down by $300,000 out of this fund, and now it's deed restricted, and we're out of it.
We have an added inventory. We still have one.
But that's,
one
we're,
unit.
I mean-
so wait,
And
that,
that's the
that goes
problem.
back to my original question. What are we trying to solve here? Because this whole conversation about Raptor Lane has been about, we want to take care of people who are, essential workers. We want to take care of elder care. We want to take care of teachers. None of that is increasing. We're trying to help that. I haven't heard the discussion that we're just trying to increase our inventory. And from other than Bennington County that says we should do 40 homes, which I think is attainable. Just, if we open up some of the laws we have, to cut it back to a 2-acre lot where we can build another, ancillary home on there. Okay, you've just increased there.
The state says we need 30,000 homes in the next 5 years. The state says
It's-
30,000.
Yeah,
40
it's
of
not-
which endorse it.
but
It's
40
not
which
gonna-
is
it's
endorsed
not- It's
from
not
the
going to
state.
happen, but I think, to me, I like the idea of, this is why the fact that it's become a public issue
Yeah,
is so positive, because we can have these discussions now.
right.
And we don't know all the right answers.
Yep.
And almost every issue that comes up is a smart idea, but then as you start to dig in, you start to run into, okay, here's why that isn't happening now. But we need to be totally open to considering different ideas.
Mhm.
And I think it's a great time for that.
We need to do it all.
Well,
Housing
let me
trust,
jump in here if I
Raptor
may,
Lane.
because you guys are making my job far too easy here.
Oh, you're still here?
It's,
Oh, are we?
I forgot about you, sorry.
Have we finished our
I don't
first
have to be
topic?
thinking, what's my next question?
I was wondering where
I thought you were
were
getting
at.
coffee.
Well, I should have, but no, this has been fascinating. But I'm just thinking, in the time we have left, I could easily see us going on for another hour or so about all the particulars of Raptor Lane and.
We're real quiet.
Yeah, give us another hour, we'll have it solved.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking I should just shut up and let you guys roll here. But I'm just thinking, I'm sure there are some other issues that voters would probably like to hear your positions on, and I, at this point, don't really know what those might be. I mean, going back through some of your meeting minutes from the last year or so, things like water issues in Dorset Village was one thing that seemed to pop up. The idea of a pedestrian lane and a walking lane and a bike lane along Route 7 going through East Dorset was something else.
How about trying to make sure our tax rate doesn't
But,
go up after the reassessment?
I guess I just wanted to give each of you a chance to kind of just talk about anything other than Raptor Lane for a few minutes. And so, Carter, why don't you? Continue
One
on.
large concern that I have, and I'm sure it's shared by most Dorset residents, is we just had a property tax reassessment, or property value reassessment last year, and they reduced the rate to try to kind of keep people quiet, but
No,
No, that's
it's a mill rate.
no the total value of the grand list doubled, which automatically means the tax rate halves, because you still just need to raise the right amount of money.
right. But I think it's given our town an opportunity to slowly ease that rate back up, and that's a concern for me, and I know it's a concern for others.
That tax rate on the municipal is, it ties in strictly to what's that's
To the
town
budget.
budget.
Right. So
For that
and that
for
can
your tax bill to
sneak,
increase,
that can creep, and that's a concern for
which
people.
we've kept it in the 5-7%, or
Yeah.
which I don't think there's any, again, that's why we try to keep town government simple, is
Yeah,
We
we
don't-
don't want to be developers, you mean?
I don't think there's any there's no appetite, and I'm sure you guys on the select board, you wouldn't have an appetite to increase the budget a whole lot either.
No.
Not at all. I mean,
No, and
when I was on
looking
the
at-
select board, we kept it pretty flat, to be honest.
Yeah, and on the school board, I've taken we've lived through some sort of expensive times in recent years.
Yeah.
On the school board, I take great pride in the fact that in the BRSU districts, statewide spending has increased over the past 5 years by 41%. Ours has increased by about 20.
Yeah.
20 is a lot still, but
Over
you know,
5 years, though.
But
It's
where,
reasonable.
but where you look at, and this year we're below as well. I think that's, we're all thrifty New Englanders here. I mean,
Well, we did a lot. we did a lot of, from the town's perspective, for the school to keep that rate down. You remember, we used to,
There were systems.
you know, oh yeah, you let the town crew do it, so we don't have to, you know, spend that money to keep the taxpayers down.
Yeah, that's
Those are all
not,
things
That's
that
not working anymore.
we have to
but-
do. Well,
Yeah,
you know,
it's a
the
different
state,
world now.
the state catches on very quickly, and you know, they catch on and stop you from doing stuff. But you know, we
well,
get
it's because we
creative.
have a bigger district now.
I do have a question. The school, is it, we're increasing the number of students there now, correct? They're consolidating and all the students are coming to Dorset?
No, we're having, we're
Yeah.
splitting, we're closing Sunderland, closing Courier, and all those students, it's a different mix between, you know, Dorset. The honest truth is, like the Dorset school, in recent years, you know, back in the old days when it was just for Dorset residents,
Mhm.
if we had stuck with that, we would have had a very tiny school at this point, because Dorset, number of kids in Dorset has decreased. Dorset school has always been attractive, so we provide inter-district choice, and kids from other towns decide they want to go to Dorset school. Next year, it's all shifting with setting up the middle school in Manchester, and then but still having an elementary school in Manchester and an elementary school in Dorset.
And how long will that get us?
Well, it'll you know, we could continue to do that for a long time if necessary, but what we're hoping to do is to actually build a new middle school that would then, the honest truth is, at that point,
Close Dorset?
Dorset School would close, and the
Okay.
town would be offered the building back for $1.
Right. Interesting.
Maybe
Which-
housing,
Well, or senior center.
senior center, yeah.
I mean, that
Which
Makes
we're,
sense.
you know, because we're in the middle of offering back the Sunderland School, and
and how
Courier
long
we're
before
gonna
that
hold
would
on
take
to.
place? How long, in your opinion?
well, if we're going to be putting a bond vote out there in probably November.
Okay.
And at that point, we'll know if a bond passes, then we'd be building a building, but it's going to be another, 4+ years before
Right.
we actually have that building there.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. But that's another one where, we have to look forward and say, is that part of this mix? Is that part
It's
of what we're
it's
doing?
a good point. That's
know.
that's forward thinking too.
How do we do that? Yeah. Agreed.
That could be important for Dorset.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember your Christmas concert or your Christmas party when I talked you into running for the board?
I had a few people talking to me about that.
Anyway, go ahead.
That sounds
I'm
like
sorry.
there must be an interesting backstory to that one.
He has great Christmas parties. I have to admit, they are fantastic.
Last sort of question I'll just throw out your way. I'm not sure if it's anything that anything controversial, whatever, or an important priority. But before we bring this conversation to a close, I guess I just wondered: do you feel like there's any need to grow the local economy of Dorset, or things the town could do that would encourage more economic growth? Maybe that's not necessary. Maybe, given the housing situation we've been talking about, that's probably not anything that might even be a good idea at this point. But
Well,
anything in particular that comes to mind?
it's our, and I use this word really lightly, but Dorset's industry is real estate. That's what we've got. We don't have a ski area. We don't have, and it's
And
And
the
it-
things that real estate supports, restaurants,
Exactly.
building.
But
and it's also, Barrow's House has a wedding. People come to Dorset. They see Dorset. They like Dorset. Then they come back and do a short-term rental. That's
to
their
me,
billboard.
it's
and then they move
also
there.
key of, I heard you say that the other day, and
Yeah.
then I thought about it and said, I kind of disagree because, I see, to me, I look at it as it is really important to understand what jobs are available in the area, because all that is, tends to impact the ability to then afford and be in the community and all that. So, it was very striking to all of us, I think, that when we saw the housing report that came out, that actually, counter to Vermont and Bennington County, Dorset over the past 10, 15 years has actually gotten younger and wealthier.
Yeah, and more
5 years.
residents.
5 years.
And more
Thanks to-
residents.
Thanks to remote jobs.
Which
and
is
that's probably the
Young
case.
families that can
But-
afford
so
to
that's
live
possible.
in Dorset have remote jobs.
But again,
in
I
software.
got
and
four
AI.
daughters. They all love it up here, but they don't have any shot
Right.
of having, I love the story, of some kids that went to school with my daughters, who went off and did the college thing and started working out there, and they said, I really want to be back in Vermont. And they figured out how to do it, a lot of them by going into the trades.
Yeah.
Because that's the way you can make a really good living here. But I think, I do think that, I love, Henry's business and other businesses, J.K. Adams and, R.K. Miles and H.N. Williams and all this, the Dorset Union Store providing jobs. I think, to me, that's a lot of what makes Dorset too. Because, it's funny, we've had a lot of debates about, whether or not zoning should allow more businesses in the village. And people are like, we can't allow anything more. And it's sort of like, because we want to retain what we have in the village. And that's like, what you love about the village is that there are some really neat shops in there, along with homes and all. And they would have never been there if you said nothing could ever be built.
right.
So I still think,
But
my own
yeah.
view on economic development is, we don't want strip malls here, but at the same time, I think we want to provide opportunities for, if somebody has a good idea, we don't want to change the nature or the feel of Dorset,
No.
but we want to provide the opportunity for things that are fitting.
When I built my mill 17 years ago, I had an option on bear paw lumber.
Oh, really?
And, it kind of rolls this whole thing back because bear paw lumber, I looked at the areas that were free of Act 250. Act 250, that was already a designated sawmill wood production facility.
How many acres was that?
That's not a lot.
No, nine?
6.
6, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so I looked at that because I wanted to walk to work. I wanted to live in my community and
But you
work
couldn't
there.
have built what you did up there in that location.
I could.
You could have?
It was free of Act 250. I could have built exactly the same thing. And I
Really?
sat down, I will never forget. I sat down on the tailgate of Donnie Doerr's little pickup truck. He looked at me and he said, Chris, how bad do you want to piss off all the residents of Dorset? And I said, no, I'm not going to do this. Yeah, we do need economic development. But I think you're right. It needs to be the right feel.
It's always-
not a big industrial mill like what I built.
So I'd like to answer your question, because I think the way I totally agree with growth, with economic growth. I think you need to have vitality in a community.
Oh,
yes.
And economic vitality is crucial. I think the way to get a little more vitality into Dorset is more year-round residents. It's where you look at Williams Store, right around Christmas and in foliage and in the summertime. It's going. But the shoulder seasons are where the Dorset Union Store maybe struggles a little bit, and where the Williams Store perhaps. But if we could have more year-round residents that are using the restaurants, using the stores, being active in town, I think that would give a little more economic.
Which is
vitality.
interesting, because we get a lot of benefit from the second homeowners too.
Oh, yeah.
But,
Well,
but
and
at the
they're
same
huge.
time, at some point, it's like, you don't want 100% of your town to be second homeowners.
Well, and some of that depends on who those full-time residents are. I mean, people who work for me, if you could give them a house they could afford in Dorset, doesn't mean they can afford to go to the Barrows house for dinner.
Absolutely.
it's-
But maybe a new restaurant would come in then.
Yep.
That
Yep.
was more
Yeah.
more affordable. And,
Yep.
I mean, that's a problem region wide.
But I look at, like, I'm a primary resident here, and then my sister last year bought a house on my same street as a second homeowner. And it's like, so I'm kind of looking at things from their perspective too, and it's interesting. It's it's important to they both are important elements of our community.
It is. But I think we
It's-
also have a large number of people who have made a choice. They've grown up here. They've lived here, but they've made a choice to move to an easier tax state.
Well, that's,
and they are
It's
second.
an easy state to leave. It's a hard state to come back to.
Yes, you know,
And
and I
that's-
think
and
that's not in our favor. We don't have control over that.
but that's something that the housing study that, is still in process, but, it really pointed out very well is I did honestly not realize, it points out the diversity of current residents in the town of Dorset.
Yep.
And the fact that, we really, like as a select board, your job is to serve all of them.
Yep, all the taxpayers.
Remember when Terry Tyler would annual meeting would always say, Dorset's greatest export is its children.
That's right. That's right.
And
Indeed.
it's so true.
You can say that about a lot of towns in Vermont, I
And
think.
very few
Yeah.
come back. And it's an affordability issue.
Well, before we wrap things up and just leave it there, any last closing thoughts anyone wants to offer before we have to run? Or
I just appreciate I think it actually was a productive discussion. And,
yeah, I think you guys, sort of people in Washington D.C. ought to check you all out.
Well,
This is how it's supposed to be
We
done.
will never get
No, thank
elected
you.
to there.
No, thank you.
this is what used to happen at Rumney's. You just sit around the
Right.
boiler and you talk about this stuff, and
Solve the problem.
you walk in friends and you walk out friends.
All right. Well, that is the way it's supposed to be, and I guess we'll leave it there for today. And again, voters in Dorset will make a decision. It's going to be a pretty tough one, it seems to me. Two of these four candidates here will wind up serving on the select board. I want to thank again Henry Chandler, Jim Salsgiver, Carter Rawson, and Chris Brooks, four candidates who are in the pool, so to speak. Two of them will wind up serving on the board, along with Frank Parent, who took the easy way out and decided to run unopposed. So we'll get him next time, for sure.
Andrew, thank you for all you do.
Oh,
Thank you.
This
Appreciate
is
it.
phenomenal.
I didn't have to do
service.
anything. I mean, like I say, you guys are all going to come back
No,
next week.
generally.
Without
So
you,
I can
without
sit
you,
back
it
and
wouldn't
go,
happen.
yeah,
No, it would not happen.
That's a
without
good
you.
idea. All right. Well, thanks again, guys.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you who've been with us. Hope you found the program informative and interesting. I sure did. We'll see you again the next time. Take care.